Folks, the last message she reads before sleep is the one that decides whether you stay on her mind or disappear overnight. Let's be real. Men send the same safe, forgettable goodnight text, sleep well, talk tomorrow, sweet dreams, and then they wonder why the spark fades, why replies slow down, and why attraction slips away. My friend, nighttime is not neutral territory. It is when her guard is down, her imagination is active, and her emotions are louder than logic. Here is the situation men are in. You have chemistry, the conversation feels fine, but when the day ends, you close it weakly. No tension, no emotional hook, no image of you following her into the quiet moments before sleep. Without realizing it, you train her nervous system to relax without you. I am not here to comfort you. I am here to wake you up. Because the right good-night text does not beg for attention. It does not chase. It leaves a trace of desire, curiosity, and emotional presence that stays with her all night. In this video, I will break down 6 good-night texts built on psychology and attraction. You will learn when to use them, why they work, and how to send them without losing your masculine frame. Stick with me. This is where men get it wrong. Let's get into it. Number 1. Why night texts trigger desire. Folks, here is the straight truth. Night texts hit differently because the mind changes when the lights go out. During the day, she is managing work, noise, decisions, and distractions. At night, those layers fall away. Her body slows down. Her thoughts turn inward. Desire becomes quieter but sharper. That is why what you say at night carries more weight than what you say all day. Let me be clear with you, my friend. This is not about saying something clever. It is about timing and psychology. When she is lying in bed, phone in hand, her imagination is active. The last emotional cue she receives before sleep often becomes the one her mind loops on. That cue can be forgettable comfort, or it can be subtle attraction. Here is what most men miss. They treat a good-night text like a formality. Sleep well, talk tomorrow, no edge, no presence, no emotional footprint. In doing that, they unknowingly teach her nervous system to shut down without them. That is not romantic. That is invisible. Let us be honest for a moment. Attraction is not built through effort. It is built through impact. A night text works when it creates a feeling without asking for anything back. Think about Mark, 44, divorced, working in real estate in Phoenix. He has been seeing Laura, 41, a marketing consultant. Their conversations are good, plenty of laughs. But every night, Mark closes the conversation politely and safely. Laura goes to sleep relaxed but neutral. She does not replay him in her mind. She does not feel pulled toward him the next morning. Contrast that with a small shift. One night, instead of closing the conversation cleanly, Mark sends a message that leaves emotional residue, not sexual, not needy, just enough warmth and intrigue to linger. Laura reads it, puts her phone down, and her mind fills in the gaps. That is the difference. Here is why this works. At night, the brain moves from logic to imagery. Thoughts become scenes. Feelings become physical sensations. When you place yourself into that mental space, you are no longer just a name on a screen. You are part of her internal world. Now listen carefully. This is not about chasing desire. It is about allowing desire to follow you. The Stoics understood this long before texting existed. You do not force attention. You create conditions where attention naturally turns toward you. When you send a night text with calm confidence, you communicate 3 things at once. You are grounded, you are emotionally present, and you are not seeking validation. That combination is rare, and rarity creates attraction. Here is the mistake to avoid. Do not send these messages from anxiety. Do not send them hoping for reassurance. If your energy is unstable, the text will feel heavy. If your energy is settled, the text will feel inviting. This is why night texts trigger desire. They land when defenses are down. They bypass logic and speak directly to feeling. And when done right, they stay with her long after the screen goes dark. If you have ever felt this moment slip past, you type, "I've felt that," in the comments. Stick with me because this is just the beginning. In the next part, we will break down the psychology behind late-night attraction and why most men sabotage it without realizing it. Number 2. The psychology behind late-night attraction. Folks, here is what most men never stop to consider. Attraction at night is not about words. It is about how the human mind behaves when control loosens. During the day, logic runs the show. At night, emotion quietly takes over. This shift is not romantic theory. It is basic psychology. Let's speak plainly. When the day ends, cognitive load drops. Decision fatigue sets in. The brain stops filtering so aggressively. This is when impressions go deeper. A thought introduced at night is processed differently than one introduced at noon. It is felt, not evaluated. My friend, this is why late-night attraction is powerful. The mind becomes receptive, not defensive. The body slows. The imagination turns vivid. And whatever emotional signal enters last often becomes the one the mind returns to as it drifts into sleep. The Stoics understood this mechanism without neuroscience. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind is colored by its thoughts. What he meant is simple. Whatever occupies the mind shapes how the world is experienced. At night, that coloring process intensifies. Here is the key psychological insight. Desire is not sparked by stimulation alone. It is sparked by anticipation. Anticipation lives in uncertainty, and uncertainty thrives in quiet spaces. Night creates that space naturally. This is where men usually fail. They try to over-explain. They try to entertain. They try to secure a response. All of that pulls the interaction back into logic. Logic kills tension. Instead, late-night attraction works when a message creates an emotional suggestion without closure, something that opens a loop but does not rush to close it. The brain hates unfinished emotional loops. It replays them. It revisits them. That replay is desire-forming. Epictetus warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. He was right, and that same imagination is what fuels attraction at night. A simple emotional cue can echo far beyond its size when the mind has space to wander. Let me be very clear here. This is not manipulation. This is alignment. You are not forcing a reaction. You are understanding timing. You are speaking when the mind is most open to feeling. Another Stoic principle applies here. Seneca said that what matters is not what happens to us, but how we respond to it. Late-night messages are powerful because they invite an internal response rather than demand an external one. There is no pressure, no request, just presence. This is why restraint matters. When you send one composed, grounded message and then step back, you communicate self-control. Self-control is attractive because it signals abundance. You are not clinging. You are not anxious. You are centered. Attraction follows emotional safety mixed with mystery. Night amplifies both. Safety because the world is quiet. Mystery because the mind fills gaps on its own. If you flood that space with too many words, you break the spell. If you respect the space, you become part of it. This is the psychology behind late-night attraction. It is not about seduction tricks. It is about understanding when the human mind is most impressionable and acting with discipline instead of impulse. If this made something click for you, type, "I understand this" in the comments. Stay with me. The next part shows how to create an emotional anchor she carries into sleep without saying too much. You do not want to miss this. Number 3. Texts that linger in her body. Folks, here is something most men never understand. The strongest messages are not the ones she thinks about. They are the ones she feels. Desire does not live only in the mind, it settles in the body. And at night, that connection becomes much easier to activate. Face the facts. When a woman is winding down for sleep, her body is relaxing, her breathing slows and her senses turn inward. This is when a well-timed message can create a physical response without being explicit. Warmth in the chest, a subtle smile, a shift in posture. That is what it means for a text to linger in her body. My friend, this has nothing to do with saying something sexual. In fact, explicit messages shut this down. They pull her back into analysis. What works is suggestion, tone, emotional texture. Consider this situation. David is 47, recently back in the dating world after a long marriage. He has been seeing Michelle, 43, a project manager with 2 kids and a full schedule. Their connection is easy. Conversation flows. But David notices something. When nights end, the energy drops. The next day feels like a reset. One evening, instead of closing the conversation the usual way, David sends a message that carries emotional weight without pressure. It is calm, it is confident, it does not ask for anything. Michelle reads it while lying in bed. She exhales, her shoulders drop. She puts the phone down, but the feeling stays. That is the difference. Here is why this works. The body remembers sensations longer than thoughts. When a message creates comfort mixed with intrigue, it activates the nervous system gently, not excitement, not anxiety, a grounded warmth. That state is deeply attractive because it feels safe and intimate at the same time. Most men rush past this. They chase reactions, they want replies, they want proof. But proof-seeking collapses tension. What you want instead is resonance. Let us be blunt. A message that lingers in her body does 3 things. It slows her down, it makes her aware of herself, and it associates that feeling with you. That is how attraction deepens without effort. Think again about David and Michelle. He does not follow up. He does not double text. He does not ask how she feels. He lets the moment stand. The next morning Michelle reaches out first. Not because he pushed, but because her body already knows him as a place of calm and presence. This is where discipline matters. If you send these messages from restlessness, they feel off. If you send them from stability, they land clean. Stoicism teaches this directly. You act from control, not from craving. Here is the key mistake to avoid. Do not turn emotional presence into availability on demand. A lingering message works because it is complete. It does not chase continuation. It leaves space. And that space is where her body fills in the rest. If this resonates with something you have experienced, type "I felt that" in the comments. Stay with me. In the next part we will look at how to use imagination to stay in her mind without saying more than necessary. Don't go anywhere. Number 4. Flirty goodnight messages done right. Folks, flirtation at night is where most men lose their footing. They either play it too safe and disappear, or they push too hard and break the mood. Let's speak plainly. Flirty goodnight messages are not about arousal. They are about invitation. Done right, they open a door without stepping through it. Here is the core principle. Flirting works when it feels light, assumed, and unforced. The moment it tries to impress, it collapses. The moment it asks for validation, it leaks need. At night, that leakage is obvious. My friend, good flirting is calm confidence in written form. It is tone, not content. It is what is implied, not what is said. The psychology here is simple. A woman responds to flirtation when it feels optional, When she senses she could lean into it or simply smile and fall asleep. That sense of choice is what keeps desire alive. This is where Stoicism fits perfectly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to act without attachment to outcomes. That applies here. You send a flirty message without waiting, without hovering, without needing a response. The discipline is the attraction. Many men believe flirtation means escalating. In reality, escalation happens in her imagination, not in your words. A well-placed line at night gives her mind just enough material to play with on its own. Seneca wrote that fire grows when it is fed, but it also dies when smothered. Flirting works the same way. Too much attention kills heat. Restraint allows it to breathe. Here is what done right looks like. The message feels relaxed. It assumes comfort. It hints at closeness without describing it. It ends cleanly. No question marks. No follow-ups. No checking in. This approach communicates something powerful. You enjoy connection, but you are not dependent on it. That balance is rare, and rarity draws attention. Let us be clear about what not to do. Do not stack compliments. Do not turn flirtation into reassurance. Do not explain your intention. Mystery disappears the moment you explain it. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from governing desire rather than obeying it. When you flirt from control, the message carries steadiness. When you flirt from hunger, it carries pressure. At night, pressure is magnified. So is calm. This is also where many men sabotage themselves by lingering. A flirty good-night message is a closing note, not an opening argument. Once it is sent, the moment is complete. The silence afterward is part of the effect. If you are still reading, this is where I invite you to go deeper. On this channel, I share more advanced frameworks on attraction, self-mastery, and masculine presence inside the members area. If you want access to that level of guidance, consider becoming a channel member. It is for men who are serious about getting this right. Flirty messages done right feel effortless because they are grounded. They do not chase desire. They allow desire to catch up. If this reframes how you see flirting at night, type "I stay" grounded in the comments. Stay with me. The next part shows how imagination does the heavy lifting when you stop over-talking. You do not want to miss this. Number 5. How to stay in her head. Folks, staying in her head is not about constant presence. It is about strategic absence combined with emotional precision. Let's be straight about it. The men who linger in a woman's mind are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who know when to stop. Here is the reality most men avoid. If you give her everything up front, her mind has nothing left to do. No curiosity, no replay, no emotional echo. Staying in her head means leaving a door slightly open, then walking away calmly. Think about how the mind works at night. When external noise fades, the brain fills gaps. It connects dots. It replays moments. A well-placed good-night message creates a gap on purpose. It gives her just enough to feel something, then invites her imagination to finish the story. Let's ground this with a real situation. Brian is 52, owns a small construction business outside Denver. He has been dating Angela, 46, a healthcare administrator who is sharp, independent, and emotionally perceptive. Brian likes her and wants to do things right. Early on, he makes a common mistake. He keeps conversations going too long at night, trying to end on a high note. What happens instead is the opposite. Angela enjoys the chats, but she goes to sleep mentally full. Nothing to revisit, nothing to wonder about. One night, Brian shifts his approach. He sends a calm, confident good-night message that acknowledges connection without wrapping it up neatly. Then he stops. No follow-up, no checking in. Angela reads, it sets the phone down, and her mind keeps circling back. Not because he said more, but because he said less. That is how you stay in her head. My friend, staying mentally present is about contrast. Warmth followed by space. Interest followed by restraint. The contrast creates tension, and tension creates memory. Here is where men get it wrong. They think staying in her head means reminding her you exist. It does not. It means letting her discover you internally. When she thinks of you, without prompting, you have already won that round. A night message that stays with her usually does three things. It suggests a shared moment, it assumes comfort, and it does not demand a response. That last part is critical. Demand pulls attention outward. Permission lets attention turn inward. Back to Brian and Angela. The next morning, Angela reaches out first. Not with a dramatic message, just a simple check-in. But the tone has shifted. There is warmth and initiative on her side now. Brian did not chase it. He allowed it. This approach requires discipline. You have to resist the urge to fill silence. You have to trust that your presence is enough. Stoic men understand this instinctively. Control what you do. Release control over how it lands. If you feel anxious after sending a message, that is your cue to step back. Anxiety leaks through words even on a screen. Calm does too. Staying in her head is not about manipulation. It is about self-respect. You create moments that stand on their own, then you let them breathe. If this describes a pattern you have lived through, type "I trust restraint" in the comments. Stay with me. The next part shows how to turn that mental presence into anticipation that carries into the next day. Don't go anywhere. Number 6. Turning sleep into sexual tension. Folks, let's clear something up right now. Sexual tension is not created by saying sexual things. It is created by what is left unsaid, especially at night. When the body is slowing down and the mind is drifting, tension forms in the space between comfort and curiosity. Be honest with yourself. Most men think tension means escalation, more flirting, more intensity, more words. But late at night, that approach backfires. It wakes the logical mind and collapses the mood. Real tension works in the opposite direction. It lowers stimulation while increasing awareness. Here is the psychology. As the body prepares for sleep, it becomes more sensitive. Touch is imagined more vividly. Presence feels closer. This is why subtle cues land deeper than explicit ones. A suggestion can feel stronger than a statement. The Stoics understood restraint as power. Marcus Aurelius wrote that strength comes from governing yourself, not from controlling others. Sexual tension at night is exactly that. You govern your impulse to push, and that restraint becomes the signal. Think of tension as a quiet current. It is not loud. It is not demanding. It is felt in the pause after reading a message, in the breath that slows, in the awareness of the body settling into bed while the mind stays alert. This is where timing matters. A message sent late enough to meet her in stillness, but not so late that it feels intrusive. The tone is calm. The energy is grounded. There is warmth, but no chasing. That balance invites her body to lean forward emotionally, while her mind stays relaxed. Seneca warned that uncontrolled desire weakens us. The men who generate tension are the ones who do not leak desire. They allow it to build naturally by not trying to harvest it too early. Here is the key. Sexual tension at night is not about arousal. It is about anticipation. Anticipation lives in tomorrow. It lives in what might happen next. When you create that feeling and then step back, the mind carries it forward into sleep. Most men sabotage this by overstaying. They follow up. They explain. They soften the edge they just created. That tells her nervous system there is nothing to lean into. Everything is already available. Epictetus said we should practice wanting things to happen as they do. In this context, that means letting the moment end cleanly. You do not need to secure a reaction. You do not need confirmation. The tension works because it is unresolved. Here is another truth many men resist. Sexual tension grows when a woman feels safe and free at the same time. Safe because there is no pressure. Free because she can imagine without obligation. Night creates the perfect environment for this if you do not interfere. A single composed message can do more than a long exchange. It sets a tone, it leaves a trace, and then silence allows that trace to deepen. This is not about technique, it is about self-control. When you trust that your presence is enough, you stop forcing outcomes. And paradoxically, that is when desire starts to move toward you. If this reframes how you think about tension, type, "I hold restraint" in the comments. Stay with me. The next part shows how confident messages build anticipation that carries into the next day. Number 7. Confident texts that build anticipation. Folks, anticipation is built by confidence, not by effort. Let's be clear about that. A confident text does not ask to be wanted. It assumes value and then steps back. That assumption is what creates forward pull. Here is the reality most men struggle with. They think confidence means saying more. It does not. Confidence is communicated through what you choose not to explain, especially at night when a message can either feel grounded or reachy. Let's talk about how this plays out in real life. Take Jason, 49, a regional sales manager in Chicago. He has been seeing Natalie, 44, an interior designer who is independent and emotionally sharp. Jason likes her, but he does not want to come across as overeager. At the same time, he wants her to feel excited about seeing him again. Early on, Jason makes a familiar mistake. His good-night texts are polite and friendly, but flat. They close the day instead of opening the future. Natalie enjoys him, but there is no build-up, no sense of what is coming next. Then Jason shifts. One night, instead of wrapping the conversation tightly, he sends a confident message that implies continuity without spelling it out. He does not hint at insecurity. He does not ask a question. He simply sets a tone and lets the night end. Natalie reads it and feels something subtle but important. Expectation. Not pressure. Not obligation. Just the sense that something is unfolding. That is anticipation. My friend, anticipation is desire with patience. It is the feeling that something good is approaching without needing to grab it now. Confident texts create this by assuming tomorrow is already accounted for. Here is how this works psychologically. When a message suggests future connection without pinning it down, the mind starts projecting. It imagines scenarios. It fills in details. That projection is emotionally engaging because it is self-generated. Most men sabotage this by being too specific too soon. They lock things down. They explain plans. They over-clarify. Clarity has its place, but at night a little ambiguity works in your favor. Back to Jason and Natalie. The next morning, Natalie reaches out with a lighter tone. There is warmth and curiosity. She feels pulled forward not because Jason chased, but because he set a confident expectation and let it breathe. This is the difference between interest and anticipation. Interest is present-focused. Anticipation is future-oriented. Night texts are ideal for planting anticipation because the mind naturally drifts toward what is next. Here is the discipline required. Once you send a confident message, you stop. You do not add context. You do not soften it. You trust that it landed. Trust is part of confidence. Men who lack this trust often undo their own work. They follow up. They clarify. They turn a strong close into a weak one. Do not do that. Confident texts communicate that you are comfortable with momentum. You do not need to manage it. You allow it. If you have ever felt that shift when someone made you look forward instead of chasing, type, "I choose confidence" in the comments. Stay with me. The next part shows how attraction grows when you stop chasing validation and start creating space. Don't go anywhere. Number 8. Attraction without begging or chasing. Folks, let's strip this down to the truth. The fastest way to kill attraction is to ask for it. Begging and chasing do not create closeness. They create pressure. And pressure is the opposite of desire, especially at night. Be honest with yourself. When a man starts checking for reassurance, double texting or fishing for reactions, he is no longer leading the emotional frame. He is reacting to it. That shift is subtle, but it is felt immediately. Attraction fades not because he cared, but because he needed the outcome. Here is the psychology at work. Desire grows when attention is offered freely, not when it is demanded. The human nervous system responds to emotional freedom. When someone feels they can lean in without being pulled, curiosity replaces resistance. The Stoics were clear about this long before modern dating advice existed. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you always own the power over your own mind. Begging hands that power away. Chasing hands it away even faster. At night, this principle becomes even more important. Late hours magnify emotional tone. A grounded message feels calm and attractive. A needy one feels loud, even if the words are polite. The difference is not in the text itself. It is in the emotional posture behind it. Let's talk plainly. Attraction without chasing means you communicate interest without attachment. You show presence without hovering. You allow space without withdrawing. That balance signals self-respect. Most men misunderstand this. They think pulling back means being cold. It does not. Stoicism is not emotional absence. It is emotional control. You can be warm and still be self-contained. Seneca warned that the man who depends on external approval is never free. In attraction, freedom is magnetic. When you stop trying to secure desire, you become someone desire moves toward. Here is where night texts go wrong. A man sends something that lands well, then immediately undermines it by waiting for a reply. He watches the screen. He follows up. He adds explanation. The moment collapses. What could have lingered is resolved too quickly. Attraction without chasing allows the moment to remain open. You send the message, then you step back into your life. You sleep. You do not perform vigilance. That behavior communicates abundance more clearly than any line ever could. Another Stoic insight fits perfectly here. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, you must be content to appear foolish or misunderstood. In this context, that means being willing to send a message without knowing how it will be received. That tolerance for uncertainty is strength. Chasing is the attempt to remove uncertainty. Attraction thrives in it. Let's clarify something important. This is not about ignoring someone to provoke a reaction. That is still outcome-focused. This is about acting from alignment. You send what feels true, then you let go of control. When you do this consistently, something shifts. Conversations feel lighter. Responses become more genuine. You stop negotiating your value through text, and that change is felt immediately. At night, when defenses are down, this grounded energy stands out even more. It feels safe. It feels confident. It feels rare. Attraction without begging or chasing is not a tactic. It is a posture. And once you adopt it, everything else becomes simpler. If this speaks to where you are right now, type "I choose control" in the comments. Stay tuned. The next part reveals how saying less at the right moment can create more desire than any long conversation ever could. Number 9. When less words create more desire. Folks, this is where most men overplay their hand. They think attraction grows through explanation, through reassurance, through keeping the conversation alive at all costs. Let's speak honestly. Desire does not grow from volume. It grows from restraint. Here is the uncomfortable truth. When you say less at the right moment, her mind does more of the work, and the mind is where desire actually forms. Think about what happens at night. The world quiets down. There are fewer inputs, fewer distractions. When you send a long message, you fill that space completely. There is nothing left to explore. When you send fewer words with the right tone, you leave room. That room becomes imagination. Let me ground this in a real situation. Paul is 56, recently retired from law enforcement in Florida. He is dating Susan, 50, a school administrator who values depth and emotional maturity. Paul is thoughtful by nature. He likes to explain himself. He likes to make sure things are clear. At first, his night messages are long, caring, detailed, supportive. Susan appreciates them, but something is missing. She feels comforted, not drawn in. The emotional door is closed neatly every night. Then Paul changes one thing. He begins ending the night with fewer words, still warm, still grounded, but concise, no over-explaining, no emotional wrapping paper. Susan reads these messages and pauses. She feels something unfinished, not confusion, curiosity. She rereads the line before putting her phone down. That small pause is where desire begins to grow. My friend, less words work because they respect intelligence and emotion at the same time. You are not feeding her a conclusion. You are offering a suggestion. Here is why this matters psychologically. The brain seeks completion. When a message feels complete, the brain rests. When a message feels open-ended, the brain engages. It loops. It revisits. That looping is not anxiety. It is interest. Most men sabotage this by trying to be perfectly understood. They clarify. They explain tone. They add context. In doing so, they remove mystery. Mystery is not deception. Mystery is space. Back to Paul and Susan. After a week of shorter, cleaner night messages, Susan's energy shifts. She becomes more playful, more initiating. Paul did not push. He did not change who he was. He simply stopped filling every silence. This requires discipline. Silence can feel uncomfortable, especially if you are used to proving yourself through communication. But Stoic men understand something important. You do not need to express everything you feel for it to be felt. Less words also signal confidence. You are not afraid of being misunderstood. You trust that your presence has weight. That trust is attractive. Here is the key distinction. Saying less does not mean being cold. It means being intentional. Every word earns its place. When words are scarce, they matter more. At night, this effect multiplies. A short message read in stillness carries more impact than a long message read in motion. If you have ever noticed that the moments you held back created more pull, type "I say less" in the comments. Let's keep going. The final part ties everything together and shows how to become the last thought she carries into sleep without trying to force it. Stay with me. Number 10. Becoming her last thought tonight. Folks, this is where everything you have learned comes together. Becoming her last thought tonight is not about one perfect line. It is about the emotional position you hold when the day ends. Let's be real for a moment. The last thought before sleep is rarely logical. It is emotional. It is sensory. It is quiet. Most men try to force that position. They try to lock it in with words. They push for reassurance. They chase a response. And in doing so, they remove the very thing that makes that final thought powerful. Here is the truth. You become her last thought when you stop trying to be unforgettable and start being grounded. The mind remembers what feels steady, not what feels loud. At night, her system is not scanning for entertainment. It is a core principle. Flirting works when it feels light, assumed, and unforced. The moment it tries to impress, it collapses. The moment it asks for validation, it leaks need. At night, that leakage is obvious. My friend, good flirting is calm confidence in written form. It is tone, not content. It is what is implied, not what is said. The psychology here is simple. A woman responds to flirtation when it feels optional, when she senses she could lean into it or simply smile and fall asleep. That sense of choice is what keeps desire alive. This is where Stoicism fits perfectly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to act without attachment to outcomes. That applies here. You send a flirty message without waiting, without hovering, without needing a response. The discipline is the attraction. Many men believe flirtation means escalating. In reality, escalation happens in her imagination, not in your words. A well-placed line at night gives her mind just enough material to play with on its own. Seneca wrote that fire grows when it is fed, but it also dies when smothered. Flirting works the same way. Too much attention kills heat. Restraint allows it to breathe. Here is what done right looks like. The message feels relaxed. It assumes comfort. It hints at closeness without describing it. It ends cleanly. No question marks. No follow-ups. No checking in. This approach communicates something powerful. You enjoy connection, but you are not dependent on it. That balance is rare, and rarity draws attention. Let us be clear about what not to do. Do not stack compliments. Do not turn flirtation into reassurance. Do not explain your intention. Mystery disappears the moment you explain it. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from governing desire rather than obeying it. When you flirt from control, the message carries steadiness. When you flirt from hunger, it carries pressure. At night, pressure is magnified. So is calm. This is also where many men sabotage themselves by lingering. A flirty good-night message is a closing note, not an opening argument. Once it is sent, the moment is complete. The silence afterward is part of the effect. If you are still reading, this is where I invite you to go deeper. On this channel, I share more advanced frameworks on attraction, self-mastery, and masculine presence inside the